Today we're going to talk about Joe Rogan and Seth Dillon. Seth Dillon is part of a conservative movement called Babylon Bee, and we're going to talk about deleting babies and what is plausible and when is it not plausible. All right, let's go ahead and get into it. All right. So this is a segment. Okay, this is coming from the episode 1857. But let's go ahead and get into it and see how this conversation goes.
Just making sure everybody has the same opportunity. Nobody needs a leg up. These people should pull them up by their bootstraps. I do think that people, generally speaking, Christian conservatives are very compassionate and do a lot of charity work.
Yes, they do.
A ton of charity work.
Yes.
This is true. Christians tend to be the most charitable. If you don't believe, okay, look at the hospitals. Okay, look at the orphanages. Look at Red Cross. All these different type of organizations tend to come from the church. We do not want to discuss that because a lot of times we don't want to discuss that because, we're so caught up in our ways of life, but we really don't understand how much the church gives. All right. The church gives a lot.
And so they're willing to put their own time volunteering and donating money towards causes that help with those things. You look at like crisis pregnancy centers, for example, which Elizabeth Warren wants to shut down for some reason. I mean, these are helping women in need, and she wants to shut them down. I mean, these are people who are volunteering their time, their resources, their money to help people who are in a tough spot. And it's completely charity. It's kindness. It's love and compassion. But it's always, always painted with a brush of, oh, yeah, you're on your own. We only care about children before they're born, not after they're born,
That is very interesting because there are conservatives who only care about babies when they're not born, right? And that's just because they just want to have a talking point and they just want to be right in a discussion or in a debate. But a lot of genuine people, when it comes to the church, we are very genuine about, okay, like the very sacredness of life. All right. And we care about it, and we should care about life while it's being conceived, while it's being nurtured in the mother's womb, as well as when the child exits out the mother's womb. And we should want the flourishing of that individual to be very prosperous throughout their whole life. All right. Not just when the baby is in the womb.
But I do think, I honestly, an argument can be made that conservative Christians are the most charitable people there are.
They're very charitable people. I think what the problem with someone like Elizabeth Warren's idea that you should shut down a place that has an ideology that millions and millions of people believe in, that life is sacred, and that that this is somehow an assault on a woman's right to choose whatever her decision may be. They're
Right.
worried about other influencers. They're worried about pressure.
You're not
They're
even
worried about
allowing
people
for a choice if you shut down the
You're-
alternative.
you're right.
What's the choice?
That's true.
You're right, and that's where I'm pretty absolute when it comes to that.
Yeah.
And not just free speech amongst every subject. Not
I can appreciate that about Joe Rogan. He is very objective in a lot of his time, a lot of his discussions, and he can recognize that, hey, you're right. Yeah, we're big on allowing open space for, the leading of babies, but a lot of people are not open to the other option, right? And Joe recognizes that, and he says, hey, you're right. We need to be open to that too as well, right? And that's very dope that he's able to see that.
just amongst a woman's right to choose or abortion laws.
Yeah.
And this idea that you can't have someone who is a Christian who talks to another person who's a Christian, and maybe they were on the fence about something, and you convince them to have a child, and it's the best decision they have ever made in their life, and they love their kids so much they couldn't imagine they were thinking about getting an abortion.
Right.
That's real too.
Yeah.
That's real too. There's also women who have been raped who should not have to fucking carry some rapist baby. There's women who have been sexually assaulted before the age of 14.
There's
that are
also,
supposed to
hold
be-
on though.
But hold on,
There's
don't stop
also,
me.
Okay.
That's real too. And we all have to agree. We have to agree on both of those things.
There are also, though, I'm not going to argue with you on that point, but I will say there are people who have been born of rape and are alive, right?
And this is the thing. And what he's about to get into is saying, there are people who were born of RAPE and they're still alive and nourishing and bringing a net positive to the communities, right? But what Joe was also saying, he was like, yeah, but it's not right to force somebody who been RAPE to have a baby and holds a RAPE, the ER baby, and have her look at this child throughout her whole lifespan, right? And what he's saying is, but there are people who was born out of that, right? Now, and I want to hear your thoughts on it, right? But for a Christian perspective, we should look at this as, hey, regardless, even though we cannot help how a child is conceived, right? They still are image bearers of God. That means because you are an image bearer of God, also known as the Imago Dei, right? There is a unlimited price and worth on your life, meaning it's limitless. The price is limitless, right? So we should value that to the point where it is sacred. And even Joe says it. Yes, life is sacred and life is this. Then it's like, okay, but you contradict yourself when you're willing to end a life just for the emotional stability of another person. Like even though I'm not condoning RAPE. I am not. And I'm speaking very graciously. I am not demonizing women or even men who chose to go this route. I am not. And this is not what this episode is for. So it's not for to demonize anybody who has taken that option. Because I got people in my family, friends who have taken this option, even though they know where I stand. But I would never try to say that they're going to hell because of it. I'm not doing none of that. Because sometimes in the heat of the situation and sometimes in the emotional roller coasters of life and dealing with all these different types of variables, sometimes we make poor decisions, right? But to say that it's okay, that is where it's like, nah, bruh, we cannot call murder good, right? And I'm gonna show scripture in the end, closer to the end, about how scripture views it, right? But let's keep going.
Right now and are pro-life, and they go around speaking, talking about
That's
how I
great.
had a right to live, and they will go out there and make an argument, a pro-life case, and they're born of a rape.
You don't have a right to tell a 14-year-old girl she has to carry a rapist baby.
And this is the thing. We cannot sit here and act like that is the majority. And I can send statistics if you want. I'll send links. Ask me in the comments. I'll send the links, right? Statistically, that is a rare case.
Bing bong.
It is a super rare case statistically that women are being RAPE and then conceiving children. Right? That is a rare case. Not saying it doesn't happen. Not saying, but the thing is, I even tell you this. I have a person in my life who was born out of two family members mating. Should he have been killed? He is bringing so much net positive to this world, even though he was conceived in a way that is not conventional or in the way that God has ordained it. But God allowed this life to be conceived. Not saying that God approved the act. I'm not saying that. But if God is all controlling, and he's all knowing, and if he allowed this life to come through, then who are we to kill it? All right? And I'm going to switch. We're called it Ratio Christi. This is a dope site. They deal with multiple different topics. All right? But I want to pull this scripture up right here. All right? And it talks about how it views. All right? First, I'm going to show Old Testament. They're going to show New Testament. And I'm going to read it. Okay, this is coming from Exodus 21:22. All right? If men fight and hit a pregnant woman, and her child is born prematurely, but there is no serious injury, he will surely be punished in accordance with what the woman's husband demands of him, and he will pay what the court decides. Here we know that it is a child that is born prematurely, right? So what does this shows? It shows that they have a high regard for a unborn child just by injuring the woman. And even though the child is unharmed, right? Right? It says, even though meaning when I say unharmed, meaning, hey, the child, okay, there may not be any deficiencies, right? But it says, but there is no serious injury, he will surely be punished in accordance with what the woman's husband demands of him. So if you are the husband and your wife gets injured by another man, right? Okay, but this is according to that time period, right? And another man injures your woman and she has premature labor. Even though the child is not harmed, he is in your debt, right? And he is required to do what the husband demands because, bruh, that was his lineage. That was the future of his family, right? And you threatened it, right? Okay, let's go to Psalms, right? Psalms 139:13. And it reads, says for you, created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. Right? And then in this article, it says, again, the image of being formed as a human being in the womb. Right? And this is so critical, right? Because it's not just talking about when the baby's fully formed, even though a lot of deleting of babies are even when they're fully formed, because they're like, well, okay, how about if it's just a couple months old? Look, when life is actually conceived, that is life. Right. And Joe Rogan and them talk about that a little bit later. They ask him, okay, what about the plan B? Like in the sense of like after the sperm meets the egg and then life is created, but the full body's not created. Right. And Seth Dillon goes and says, look, if it's preventing life of happening, meaning, hey, if it stops it before it meets the egg, then that's a different story. I believe that all Christians should have this thing. The moment that life begins, it's untouched. It cannot be touched. Because God is now doing a work in that woman, right? And doing a work on that life, in that child. All right. As believers, I believe we should not be okay with the offing of another human in spite of how it was conceived. Yes, I know it's tough. Even in those rare scenarios, right? When people are RAPE, we don't have a say in who lives and who dies. Because all life is sacred. There's no debating that. But if you want a longer form content, then I'm willing to give that to you. I'm even willing to stream you and we can have that conversation live. But for any believer to sit here and say that it is okay to end a child, you are committing murder. And that's all I got to say about that. Hey, but until next time, grace and peace.